Now, over the years, as I learn more and more about personal finance, I grow more and more convinced that there is no force more destructive to wealth building for most Americans than the way we buy cars. In fact, I think the average American could generate over $2 million more in wealth for themselves by changing the way they buy and use their automobiles. Now, let me show you how. Now, clearly, there are a few ways one can approach the purchase of a car. The first major decision we'll discuss in this video is buying new instead of used. And depending on which survey you believe, around 60 to 75% of Americans buy new cars instead of used cars. The difference between new and used is important to note because the cost of the average new car as of January 2025 was $49,740 versus $25,571 for the average used car. So already we're talking about a near 50% difference in the overall cost before we even get into financing. And clearly, buying used is a quick and easy way to save quite a bit of money, but price is just one important factor. Another is depreciation. And you're probably aware that nearly all cars depreciate or decrease in value over time. It's important to note that new cars do this much faster than used cars. In fact, according to Kelley Blue Book, new cars lose 60% of their value in the first 5 years after they're purchased. The average lifespan of a car is 12 years, which means that 60% of the value is gone in only 42% of the car's life. The remaining 40% of the car's value stretches out over the course of 7 years or more if you take good care of it. Put another way, if you were buying a car worth $50,000, would you rather pay $30,000 to drive the car for 5 years or pay $20,000 to drive it for 7 years? Yes, it will smell better in the first 5 years, but is the additional cost really worth it? Another major factor in the overall cost of car ownership is whether or not you use financing to make a purchase. Now, toward the end of 2024, the average interest rate on a new car was 6.7% with a term of 68.5 months. That's 5 years, 8.5 months. And the average interest rate for a used car at the end of 2024 was 11.74% with a term of 67 months. Now, there are two things about that information that I found shocking. First, lower income households are much more likely to buy a used car, which is ironic because they're also having to pay much higher interest rates on car debt. The second thing is how similar the term of the loans is. People are basically borrowing money for 5.5 years, whether the car is used or new. Now, obviously, a new car has a much better chance of making it through a 5.5-year loan, but for used cars to have loan terms that are nearly the same seems strange to me. It's as if the average consumer believes the useful life of a used car is the same as that of a new car, and that makes zero sense to me. Clearly, consumers are not thinking about the long-term implications of how they buy cars. Let's take a look at overall costs of each approach to buying a car to capture the full cost of that decision. So on the table on your screen, you'll see 4 different approaches to buying a car, given the options that we've already discussed so far. So you got a new car that you buy with debt, a new car you buy with cash, a used car you buy with debt, and a used car you buy with cash. Now for the scenarios that included debt, I've assumed a down payment of 20%, which is the national average. And overall, you may look at this table and think to yourself, what's the big deal? If I buy a car with debt, I'm only going to pay about $8,000 more over 5.5 years versus paying cash. That's fair enough, but it's only part of the picture. Looking at the total cost of the car alone fails to account for the opportunity cost of investing and saving the value of your monthly car payment instead. And before you roll your eyes in disgust, this is exactly the sort of behavior most millionaires use that propel them to that millionaire status. It's rarely inherited or the result of a winning lottery ticket, and it's not because they have massive incomes. Most millionaires in the United States have average incomes below $100,000 throughout their working lives. About 75% of millionaires say they reach 7-figure status by consistently saving and investing a portion of their income over a long period of time. If you're giving that money away on a car payment, you won't be able to save and invest that money instead. So how much of an impact could a monthly car payment have on your long-term net worth? If you invested $417.70 every month, instead of making monthly car payments with that money, you'd have $34,718.23 after 5.5 years. If you invested $701.50, that's the value of the new car payment, you'd have $58,306.10 after 5.5 years. These may not seem like very exciting numbers, and I have to admit that if you compare them to the purchase price of the cars, then you're right. But remember, we're taking the long view here. What if you bought all of your cars this way over your complete working lifetime? Now, the average American owns a car for 8.4 years before they move on to a newer one. So it's conceivable that on average, Americans repeat this cycle at least 5 times, that's over 45 years, between when they buy their first car and when they retire. And if you kept up this method of investing your monthly payment for 45 years instead of paying off a car note, you have $1,604,768.93 from the used car payment value, that $417.70 a month, and $2,661,084.03 based on the new car payment of $701.50 invested every month. That is a life-changing amount of money obtained through the power of compounding interest, and you can achieve it by investing consistently over time. Finally, I'll just close with some thoughts about personal experience. I can tell you that buying cars with cash and investing the money you'd normally be spending on a monthly payment can have a significant impact on your net worth over time. On your screen, I have a list of 4 vehicles I've owned in my life. They're relatively modest, and aside from the Ford Ranger, which was bought before I learned all this finance stuff, I paid cash for each one of these vehicles. Now, none of these cars are very flashy, but buying used, moderately priced cars with cash has provided significant freedom over the years for me to invest a portion of my income instead of making monthly payments. And my general practice is to buy a lightly used car with cash and drive it as long as I possibly can. Now, it does require planning in advance and saving for a few years as I anticipate the need for a new vehicle, but it is totally paid off. And naturally, I would encourage you to do the same. Currently, only 29% of Americans buy cars with cash, and I'd imagine many of those people are very wealthy. So as a result, I see an abundance of opportunity for Americans to change the way we make one key purchase and harvest significant rewards from it. If you want a much more detailed analysis of used versus new, cash versus financing a car, I did a video last year that takes a much deeper dive into the value of buying cars with cash. Please feel free to check it out. I'll put a link to it above and also down in the comments below. Now, if you found this information helpful, please consider clicking like and subscribe below. Also, check out our YouTube channel, our website, martinmoney.com. There's a bunch of links in the comments. As always, I'm grateful for your interest and your time watching my videos. God bless and take care.